Montana East Regional News, this is Emilie Boyles. The Walter Larson trial is in progress now. The question is, who killed Susan Casey? That is the question jurors will be asked to decide at the end of the Walter Larson trial. Larson is charged with 1 count deliberate homicide and 1 count of tampering with evidence in conjunction with the 2008 death of Susan Casey in Glendive, Montana. Monday, a jury of 7 women and 5 men were selected. Tuesday, District Judge Richard Simonton provided the jury with some understanding of the trial process and told them, quote, "Your task in this case is to decide whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty," unquote, and repeatedly reminded them they are not to speak about the case, text or receive texts about the case, or access any kind of media, including social media such as Facebook, or look up words in dictionaries. The case opened with State Prosecutor Brad Light telling the story, starting with, quote, "It was a typical Friday night in Glendive on April 11, 2008, unquote, couching Larson, Casey's first ex-husband, as a man who, quote, got jealous and got angry, unquote. Light painted Casey as a woman who was on good terms with her about-to-be second ex-husband, Ted Casey, who was enjoying some newfound freedom in her impending divorce and had several simultaneous relationships. The prosecution said that she had a re-emerging relationship with Larson. However, at the 2008 St. Patrick's Day pub crawl, she ran into a high school friend, Brad Holzer, who was also in the process of separating from his wife and began dating him as well. In the opening statement, the prosecution asserted that in the month between the pub crawl and her disappearance, Casey wanted the relationship with Holzer, and Larson's anger and jealousy, quote, then spiraled out of control, unquote. Light described Casey as someone who went to work, went home to be with her children, and then went out with friends on the weekend. In the days prior to her disappearance, he referenced phone calls and emails that the jury will hear about in the coming days that came from Larson's computers and phones. He added that the jury would hear that Casey was subjected to forcible manual strangulation, adding, quote, Larson killed in anger because he was hurt and was spiraling out of control because of his jealousy, unquote. After Light closed up his opening statement, J. Thomas Bartleson gave the opening statement for the defense. He told jurors that, quote, as he sits before you today, it is a fundamental principle of liberty in our country that Walter Marty Larson Jr. is an innocent man. And at the conclusion of a week's worth of evidence, he should remain so. What happened in this case is that there was a rush to judgment by law enforcement. They did not even look anywhere else, unquote. He, too, told a story. Bartleson noted that Larson and Casey met when they were young, married, and grew apart. He noted that, quote, Marty had a history of doing things that were dumb and stupid. In 1998, Marty did one of those things by damaging one of Casey's vehicles in 1998 because he was hurt and didn't know what to do, unquote, and consequently did not see her or their 2 children for 10 years. Bartleson said that Larson never did harm to people, only objects. 10 years after the incident, while ending her marriage to Ted Larson, Casey brought Larson back into her life to develop a relationship with her and her children. Citing an incident in a bar in 2007, which resulted in Ted Casey's arrest for assaulting Susan, when Casey went missing, Bartleson asserted that Wally Peters, then the Dawson County Undersheriff and now state parole and probation officer who remembered the 1998 incident, told local officers in the Billings police to look at Larson as a suspect and that Larson had tried to kill Casey in 1998. Bartleson said, quote, that is simply not true, unquote. Bartleson pointed to Ted Casey as the culprit, saying, quote, after a decade apart, Marty finally developed a relationship with his children. There is evidence that she and Marty loved each other and told the kids that they might get back together, unquote. Marty had everything to lose, he added. Ted had everything to gain. Following opening statements, the prosecution began calling witnesses. Shay Larson, Susan and Walter Larson's son, testified first, setting the scene for the evening at home before Susan Casey went missing. During cross-examination, the defense team got the son to say that Ted Larson was not abusive, but once had thrown a coffee mug at him and hit his back. Several other witnesses called earlier in the day included a friend of the Casey children who stayed the night Susan went missing and described Susan as being on the phone and, quote, having a Bud Light in a bottle while she was there. A friend of Susan's who was with her drinking at the friend's home until Susan received a call from her other gentleman companion, Brad Holt, who in the middle of the night of April 12th took Susan Casey to the SLU side of intake to talk. Holtz described their relationship and the passion between them and the fears that insinuating emails and phone calls caused. His now ex-wife also testified about a phone call she got regarding Brad's relationship with Susan Casey. Also testifying, a sister-in-law who described the process of realizing something was wrong, looking for her, and calling the police, Susan's father and her brother-in-law. Near the end of the day, 2 witnesses appeared for the prosecution who will be recalled for cross-examination and additional questioning from the prosecution. Now Glendive Chief of Police Ty Ulrich, who in 2008 was a police captain in charge of the evidence and family communications in this case, and Wally Peters. Court adjourned at 3:30 p.m. and will reconvene at 8:30 a.m. on Wednesday. We'll keep you up to date as the Walter Larson case progresses through the next week and a half. From Montana East Regional News, this is Emilie Boyles.